Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us from all around the world today. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining today's session with Lizzie and I talking all about the science of style and salary. My name is Meggie Palmer and I'm the founder of a company called PepTalkHer, which is on a mission to close the gender pay gap. And we've got the fabulous Lizzie Edwards here, who is a very well-renowned stylist based in London. Lizzie, we're so excited for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for asking me. I'm just quickly closing off my email just in case I get that binging noise, which we all get when we're online. So I've just done that. So yeah, I'm really excited to see you and to hopefully have a good chat about this issue and also get some great questions.
Absolutely. This is going to be a super interactive session. We have half an hour together. We want to be respectful of your time. So if you've got questions as we're going along, please just go ahead, pop them in the chat, and we will get back to as many of them as we can. If you want to have your camera on, go ahead. We ask that you stay on mute unless you're asking a question, but we are open books. Lizzie and I are super happy to answer any questions at all. So today's conversation is really focused on the power of your personal brand and style and how that can actually impact and influence the success that you have in business. And Lizzie, as I mentioned, is a famous stylist based in London. And she is going to help us unpack some of the psychology and the science behind actually why what you wear and how you show up at work does impact and influence the success that you can have in your career. And I'm going to be sharing with you as well a couple of the tips that we share with folks in the PepTalkHer community that can impact how much you're paid at work as well. So Lizzie, let's just start with debunking this theory. Some people would say that actually it's not what you wear or how you look at work. It's all about actually how much you achieve in the workplace, like the KPIs that you hit, how much revenue you bring in for the business, etc. What would you say to people who have this theory that actually what you wear and how you look in the workplace doesn't impact the success of your career?
I would be surprised if anybody still thought that it had no impact. I mean, the level of how much impact I think is obviously debatable, but there's a few reasons why I really, obviously it's my job is to help people with their style and particularly around workwear, but there's a few key factors that come into play. The first of which, and again, am I going to assume that it's going to be women mainly on this call? With women in particular, dressing for work is such a challenge and it's quite easy to get wrong. I think it's not that it's more important for women. I just think that with all the choice, with all the variety, it's just easier to get wrong, harder to get right. So I think that's one thing. And I think the other thing that for women particularly, there's so much confidence that can be gained from how you dress and how you feel in your clothes. That's one of the most important things personally for each individual. But also, obviously, we absolutely, I just don't think that anyone can deny that we judge each other. People are judged on how they appear. And that's obviously first impression. So in an interview or when you've never met anyone before, they will make a judgment on you before you've opened your mouth. That's just, sorry, we all do it as well. It's just human nature. But in the workplace, it's an ongoing impression that you're making with your colleagues. So that's why with the idea of personal branding, the consistency is so important. It's not about turning up amazing for an interview and then literally going on a downward slide. People are looking and noticing all the time, and particularly around promotion, depending on where you are in your career, but particularly I would say when you're at a junior level, the people above you on the ladder are looking down and they're seeing who is capable, who has got leadership potential. And all of the messages that you give them, including how you show up visually with your clothes, give a good insight. And one of the things that I've had experience with a client as well, because I've said to them, it's that idea of, be the person that's ready to step in at the last minute. They will know who, if say somebody who was senior, who was supposed to be taking a meeting or be in a meeting, has got held up, can't make it in that day, and they have to look around the office, but who can we have to step in? They will be looking at who's showing up visibly in that way. So just being prepared visibly for that. And I've had clients where, particularly one client who was that person in the office, and in a room full of people of all equal skills and talents, they are going to choose the person who looks the most professional, the most senior, the most capable. That is definitely my belief. And there are studies. There's quite a lot of studies around the impact of how you dress. There's one from 2022, which is the most recent one, where it says that 18% over 5 years, people who invest in their image over people who don't can see an 18% difference in their pay over 5 years, and that's a big amount over a lifetime. It really does make a difference.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, yeah, if you're earning, let's say, for people in the US earning $100,000, 18%, that's like $18,000 extra per year. That's no joke, right? And to your point, Lizzie,
and you might be investing that. It's like it's really investing, and it's not just about clothes. This is about everything from, it could be everything from your hair, getting your hair done, getting your nails done, grooming, maybe getting your teeth straightened. It can be everything that takes into account your personal impact and that visible representation of your personal brand.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. The other thing, Lizzie, that you said that was interesting to me and aligns with the work that we do at PepTalkHer as well around salary is the consistency piece. So wanting to be consistent in terms of how you talk about your successes to work, similar to what you were saying in terms of being consistent in terms of visually how you show up in the workplace, so that it's really tapping into those unconscious biases that we all hold, for better or worse. One of the biggest challenges around the gender pay gap is that there's a whole bunch of factors that we could talk about for hours, but one of the biggest factors is unconscious bias and discrimination. And that's because of the way that we've been socialized for a really long time as little kids, as adults in the workplace. And so actually to shift that unconscious piece takes a really, really long time. And so it's the same thing, for better or worse. There is an unconscious bias that tells us if someone looks polished, if they look professional, they must be better, right? And it doesn't matter if this is fact or fiction, and we're not necessarily saying that we love or hate the fact that this is what it is, but we know, to Lizzie's point from studies, that this is a reality, that perception matters, right? And that, unfortunately, perception is reality for a lot of people, especially when you think about it in the workplace. A lot of senior folks that you're dealing with, you may only have very sparing interactions with them. It may just be fleeting interactions on Zoom, or they may only see you in meetings. They may not actually interact with you at an interpersonal level or at a professional level. And so if you think about that, if there's senior decision makers who are deciding who gets promoted, who gets put up for partner, who gets put on the large clients, you can see how from their perspective, they're not working with you day to day. So actually what Lizzie's saying is really interesting, because they literally might only just see you through a glass office window, and that's their only impression of you. That doesn't mean that it's right or that it's fair, but you can see how that has a really big impact. Lizzie, what's one thing one of the things that I always talk to people about when they're asking for a pay raise, when they're going in for those conversations with their boss about their career performance, the way that you feel about yourself is actually very important, because that confidence translates, right? Like if I feel like rubbish, and I'm recovering from meningitis, so bear with me with my voice today. But if I feel like rubbish, then I'm kind of going to maybe show up a bit like this, like not necessarily look super confident. If I've had a blow dry and I'm wearing my power suit, I'm going to lean forward. My body language is going to send all these signals of confidence and excitement, and sort of wanting to really lean into the conversation, which impacts and influence how people perceive me as well. One of the things that I always say to people, I have curly hair actually naturally, which is very hard to tame. So kudos to anyone on the call today who also has curly hair struggles. One of the things that I sometimes do is actually get a blow dry, because it makes me feel more confident in how I look. Are there any quick wins that people can do, Lizzie, in terms of feeling confident with their style?
I think my message is always to be intentional. So to really be thinking ahead, and obviously I mentioned the word personal branding. I really encourage everyone, and again, I don't know exactly what you do with the people that you work with, but to really think of themselves as a personal brand, and to know their values of what they want to stand for, what they stand for, and then think about how they're dressing and making sure that how they're going to be viewed is in those words that they think about. So for example, often there's a certain few keywords that come up regularly for people when they're talking about their personal brand values, and usually in a workplace situation it will be things like competent, professional. And it's just to really think about, when you're getting dressed, just to have the words in your mind when you're preparing for an interview or preparing for a negotiation meeting. It's absolutely to be planning ahead and to be thinking about what you're going to wear, not the morning of. Really think it's part of the process to really give it time and to think about it in advance and to be looking at yourself in the mirror. On a bigger picture, I'd say do an image audit, but on this particular question, just to be thinking, right, what I'm wearing, does it say those things? And obviously with what you've just mentioned, the confidence piece, and to feel like, okay, do I look like the person that's worth this salary increase that I'm asking for? Am I projecting the fact that I'm taking my role seriously, that I look like somebody who is bothered? And that's why these little things that people can do for work, where, like you say, getting a blow dry, but on a more basic level, just making sure that your clothes are crease free and look put together, and you haven't just picked them off the floor. They're sort of laughable, but they're actually really important. And just to look like you've considered your work outfits, not like you've just put them together at the last minute. And in those negotiations, just before you go in, just to be thinking, what is it that I want them to know about me? And just to sense check it and say, does this look like that? And they don't always have to be words like professional and strong and all that. They can be personal ones, because authenticity is so important. So whatever your words are, if you've got certain things that you want to be seen as being approachable, know about how colors work on you, know how textures work, to give that impression, so that you know that what is your impact in that room. Because sometimes people just don't know their impact and how they appear to other people. And often, again, a lot of the people I work with have been through leadership development courses, they've had 360s, they've done all sorts of things. And sometimes they're really frustrated when they meet me and they do the work with me, and they say, God, I wish someone had told me about the image piece. Why are we talked about everything else? It's like nobody wants to mention it, but actually it's so impactful because of the confidence it can give. So I just think it's about being intentional. Don't leave things to the last minute, and really just look at yourself with an objective eye, and ask someone that to give, if you have got a mentor or someone senior who you value their opinion, and be ready to take it if they say you something that's not too positive, because I think that's really essential, is to be able to take the feedback. And just to be prepared to invest in doing something about it, upping your level of spend, upping the quality of the clothes you're wearing, not thinking, oh, it doesn't matter if it's a cheap suit. No, it really is worth, talking about statistics and studies. There's been a lot of studies about, the difference between wearing cheap suits and more expensive suits in negotiation and things like that. And I think a lot of it, again, it's the psychology, it's the mindset. When people wear something that's expensive, that fits well, that's got a nice lining to it, they just show up differently.
Yeah, say nothing of the fast fashion piece, but also, to your point, Lizzie, the psychology of investing in yourself, and then how that actually translates into how you show up for yourself in those conversations, and what you start to expect of yourself, and therefore from others as well. Lizzie and I are both super passionate about helping all of you and all professional women to get paid more and to get promoted faster. That's really our mission. We tackle it in very different ways. Lizzie on the styling side, and me on the negotiation and career clarity side. But really what we're here to do is to help support all of you, right? We want you to succeed. We want you to be your most confident self, so that you can go out and do amazing, amazing stuff in the world. Lizzie, one of the things you said earlier was the power of knowing the one word that you would use to describe yourself and your personal brand. I was wondering, and maybe you've got several words, but like, what's a word that you use to describe your personal style, for example?
Well, I mean, for me, mine is definitely for my personal style. So there's two different things I teach people. I teach them to have their style words, which is more of an aesthetic, and then their personal brand words. And mine is one of my values is simplicity.
Yeah.
So for example, everything I teach, it's simple. Like, it's really, that's unencumbered, just really basic, quite factual. And that's my personal style. I'm very simple. So if I was to sort of have a business, for example, where that wasn't one of my core values, and I showed up with a lot of ruffle and puff and earrings and all that, it wouldn't align. So it sounds like it sort of shouldn't matter, but it makes a difference to be making sure that how you show up aligns with your values.
I love that. And I wonder if everyone wants to even share in the chat one word that you think sums up your personal brand. I think you mentioned a word earlier, Lizzie, which is approachable, which I really like from a personal branding piece. But then similar to you in terms of my wardrobe, I try and stick to a capsule wardrobe where, you know, like lots of navies and creams and blacks, so everything sort of mixes and matches. So I don't know, Lizzie, maybe I could use the word classic or capsule. I'm not sure what word I could use, but just I think this is an interesting exercise for everyone to think about. Is there one word that you can put in the chat that helps summarize how you would describe your personal brand, or certainly how you would love others to perceive you? Rebellious.
In my exercise, I get people to say 5 because it's a kind of group number. Because I also just say to people is that, say if you've got some in your mind for when you're in the workplace, they can change. Like they can be on a certain day, you might need to look powerful.
Yeah,
and another day you might need to be approachable depending on your day. And what really I'm so passionate about is that when you know that in your mind of today, I've got this meeting and I need to be this, like for example, you use the word approachable, the colors you wear and the kind of outfit you put together would be totally different from a day where you wanted to be powerful, where you might wear high contrast outfits, quite crisp corners, quite a standoffish kind of impactful outfit is very different to the one where maybe you're going to have to fire someone and you want to be approachable. You'd wear low contrast outfits, soft fabrics. It's quite a different thing. And again, people get that when they try it out. Like it's something that you can try in the mirror just to see the difference in different looks, and just to have those words front of mind it's just a really good way to do it. But one is a good start for sure.
Yeah, and I think Lizzie's right. You know, like we're not just one word, are we? And we're not just one thing in the workplace either. And also your personal brand and style needs to carry you through the weekends and evenings. And maybe you're a little different than in the workplace than how you want to show up at barbecues or on a date.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But what's really great, to add another thing, is what's really great is also one of the things that I really advise people to do is to do an image audit and obviously have a clear out of their wardrobe. And when you're looking at your clothes through the lens of your personal brand and the words, it's easier to let go of things that aren't right, because you can have something that's totally nice, but when you're able to say, okay, this dress, is it A, B, C, D, you know, and you think, okay, no, that dress is cute. Hang on, cute is not one of my words. Okay, that can go. So it just helps you to look at everything objectively. It's not about whether something's nice or not. It's about whether it's going to get you where you want to go.
I think that's such an interesting point, and having that almost like a framework through which to then audit the wardrobe, and then also to make decisions on when something's on sale or when you're on the high street. Am I going to get it or not? Think about it through the prism of those words of how you'd love to be perceived. Yeah. I think that's very, very powerful. And, you know, one of the things that you can do as well from an audit perspective, and I'd like to challenge you all to think about this today. The next time you're sending an email, I want you to just look at objectively, look at the text in the email that you're sending and just audit that from a perspective of, if I want to be perceived as powerful, if I want to be perceived as promotable or as seen as a leader in the organization, audit the language in your emails as well. And just think objectively, like, is this the sort of language that a leader would send? Is this the sort of language that a partner or a promotable senior exec within the business would send? And just think about it through that prism too. I think being really clear on how you want to perceive helps you show up in different ways across the workplace, not only just in what you're wearing as well. One of the things, Lizzie, that we talk a lot about at PepTalkHer is that people pay the price that you put on yourself. You know, the thing about negotiation is that it's not necessarily fair, and you don't always get in life what's fair and reasonable, but you do get in life what you negotiate, right? When it comes to your salary, your job title, etc. And the price that you put on yourself from a salary perspective, from a benefits perspective, really comes from within. And that's why I so love what Lizzie's talking about, because every incremental change that we can make as individuals across the perception that we have of ourselves actually comes across in all these different facets of our career. And it's backed up through those different research studies that Lizzie and I have mentioned today as well. So super valuable advice. We've got time for questions as well. So if anyone wants to put questions in the chat, please do. We're going to send you some information after this session about the program that Lizzie runs. Some people have been asking about it already in the chat, so you'll get some information on that later today. We'll also send you through some of the information on the programs that we run specifically around negotiating your salary. But Lizzie, I just wanted to acknowledge there's some really cool words coming through in the chat. Someone wants to be described rebellious, creative, fun, rodeo inspired, hybrid, chic, intriguing. So some great like starting points for people here as well, which is awesome.
That's fantastic, because even just, you know, when people say things like, you know, what you're rebellious, I immediately have got things in my mind of what that would be. And that doesn't mean you have to walk in with a leather jacket with studs all over it, but you might have a shoe with one stud on it rather than a plain shoe. Like, it's just bringing things in a tiny way. Yeah, it's just so I mean, I've got so much to say about this, and obviously this is only like one tiny part of my process, which is in my book, if anyone doesn't know that I've got a book, and it's all mapped out in there.
Yeah, and we'll get Jersey from my team to pop the link to Lizzie's book in the chat for you as well. We'll also put the link to our pay raise cheat sheet in the chat so that you all can have access to that too. And even Lizzie, just reading these words, like someone said French, I'm just like, I'm smiling and I'm kind of really enjoying it. And it's also just giving me this idea of like, if I described myself as French and I got up in the morning and I put something on that felt French, it would make me smile, which would make me just like feel happier, which would make me show up in the world just that little bit happier for the day, you know. And it all adds up, doesn't it, Lizzie? It
all adds up. And exactly like you said, I mean, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that it is the most important thing. No, I'm going with the idea that it's a given that you're already brilliant at your job. If everything else is equal, this is just another tool for your toolkit. And why wouldn't you just use it and maximize it? Because it's got so much leverage on it. Honestly, I think that there's so much that women can do, and I know that a lot of women might bemoan the fact that it's not fair and that they have to put makeup on, or I don't say that you have to, I say that you get to. You know, men don't have the you know, opportunity. I mean, they do more now, but to say put concealer on if they're feeling tired, or to, you know, dye their hair, or to, you know, just to do other things to make them feel better and to express themselves a little bit more creatively. And I just want to say shout out, I've just looked through the comments and I can see that a couple of my Elevate members are in the chat, so I really appreciate. I can see, I don't know how many, but I saw Pfizer and Tracy, so that's great that you've joined the call. Thanks, ladies.
Yeah, there's a few of them here, which is awesome. So if you've got questions, please pop them in the chat. We are here to support you. Any questions that you have around style, around salary, around the science of the both of them together, please pop it in the chat, and we want to get to as many of those questions as we can for you. There has been a question coming through, Lizzie, for folks who are shopping on a budget and who might be very petite or very tall, you know, who don't necessarily fit sort of like a typical sizing situation. Do you have any advice or hacks for people who fall into the buckets that might sit at either end of often what the high street has to offer?
Well, from the petite side, you just have to get alterations done. I hate to say it, but you just have to consider alterations and really think about, when you've got a price point that you're shopping at, you need to just know about your local alterations place and how much it would cost to get a hem done. And also just to consider, when you need a hem done on your trouser, it's very likely you're also going to need the cuff done. A lot of people forget about the cuff and have their blazers hanging too low, but just to factor that in to the cost of the garment. So it's almost like you could get a great blazer in Zara and get it altered, and for the same cost that you might spend on a slightly higher price point blazer that doesn't really fit you. So it's the fit that often will have the impact more than the cut. So with Petite, you know, there are a few brands, and I know we've got people from all over, so I won't go too much into UK brands, but there obviously some brands have Petite, but also you do have to just consider getting things altered, and that's also in addition for tall. Now, I don't know how tall the tall person who mentioned that is. I'm 5'10", so I'm considered tall. You know, yes, it's a bit, you know, waistbands are never in the right place. I just avoid things if they're really in the wrong place, and just have to sort of shop. You know, some brands, particularly say German brands, are longer in the body because they're generally taller. So if you think about the origin of the brand, and the general height of that population, so it's like French brands are often very little, Japanese brands are quite little, German brands are quite bit, like Boss is quite taller and larger. So that, I'll also just say that I've got a resource that is available, a free resource that I've got called 10 Top Stores for a Winning Work Wardrobe. I will send that out as well, because that's just like the brands that I have as my sort of top 10 across price points, go-to brands on that. But in terms of you know, in terms of petite and tall, I just think you just have to consider alterations. And I say that to absolutely everybody, you know, because every woman thinks that her body is the hardest body to dress. You know, oh, my boobs are a bit big, or I've got the, you know, and it's like, you just have to get the something that fits you in the place that's the biggest, and then you get the alteration done. And once you change your mindset on the fact that whether that's worth it or not, which again, I'll just relate to men who buy suits for work, they don't expect that they walk into a shop and buy it off the rack and it fits them. There's no way. They get them tailored. That's
They
what,
do,
you know,
don't they?
tailoring.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything from having something obviously completely bespoke at that end, but even if they went into a fairly low-end tailor, they would be somebody who would tweak it. So I think, again, with women, when you're thinking about the salary potential of looking good at work, the investment is absolutely worth it to make you think about getting clothes altered to fit you.
I love what you're saying there, Lizzie. And I also want to acknowledge, someone's put in the chat, you know, should you have to tone down your clothes for the workplace so it doesn't look too bohemian or woolly if that's how we dress? I love this, because I think also, you know, the benefit of personal style is that it also gives you a way to show up authentically at work, right? Visually. And to your point, Lizzie, if you see yourself as rebellious, you mentioned the stud earlier, perhaps it's not a studded jacket, but maybe it's a little stud on a heel, something like that. I think, you know, to your point earlier, Lizzie, as well, like it's not that this is the most important thing in your professional life, but it's one factor that can influence your success and your salary. And thinking about that strategically and leaning into what you love about yourself and the things that make you different, you can actually use that to your advantage in terms of your personal style and aesthetic as well, which I find really exciting. And I hope that you're all getting excited about this today in terms of the framework that Lizzie's applying to this. I love what you said earlier, Lizzie, about coming up with the one word and then leaning into that as a framework for when you're auditing your closet, and also when you're shopping as well. Do you think that actually having a clear personal brand and style can be a point of difference in terms of being able to show up as your true self in the workplace?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think there's two things. It so depends, like workwear is so broad. I mean, you know, some people just sit at home working virtually now, and some people are in a very, very corporate old school office. I think that you really have to take into account your employer. If you work for yourself, if you work for an employer, you absolutely have to consider what they're representing in their audience. I think you know that's just part of your job. You've taken that on when you've gone to work for them. But I think that they're bringing your own authentic self to work is really important. And I really think as well, it does matter where you are in your career. I think when you're more junior, you probably have to toe the line a little bit more. But like I said, you can have a nod to things, so let people know who you are. I definitely think as you get more senior, it's much more, again, you're kind of, people know that you're brilliant at your job, and you've got a lot more license to show up. If you're someone who wants to be a bit more outrageous, that's kind of your right, I think, by the time you get to a certain age. I think that, but again, by the time you're in a certain level in a certain career, I would in my experience, somebody who was, say, particularly bohemian or particularly relaxed probably isn't working for a very neat kind of corporate. They're just the values, back to the values piece, the values aren't aligned. So I would say, in my experience, that if somebody's how they needed to show up to work was so different to who they were in their personal life, they'd probably be better off in a different company, you know, with who's got a better, more aligned brand, because otherwise you're just constantly trying to make yourself someone that you're not. If you're so different on the weekend that people wouldn't recognize you in the street because, oh my God, you're so different. I think there's probably a mismatch.
Well, and to your point, Lizzie, someone was also asking about, can I wear this in the workplace? Someone else is saying, is cleavage, a low cut top's always a no-no on virtual meetings? And I think to Lizzie's point, it really depends on the company, doesn't it? Like one of, she actually does babysitting for us, but she's in her mid-20s, and she works she's a professional, and she works in the creative industries, and she's a gorgeous woman. And she absolutely has cleavage, and like it has is totally unashamed about that, as she should be, and like there's no issues in the creative industries that she works in. It's like,
it's so
she's
depends.
amazing.
Yeah.
And it's aligned with her. Yeah, I think, like, to your point, Lizzie, like I think sometimes it's also okay to go, if I'm feeling there's such a mismatch, it's also okay to look for another job at certain instances. If you don't feel like you can show up as yourself, if you don't feel like you're being paid what you're worth, it's okay to consider maybe you might want to change jobs as well.
But I would say with the cleavage thing, above everything, I personally think that in most workplaces it's probably not appropriate unless you're in fashion. Like I was at this place called Sheer Luxe yesterday. The girls are walking around. It's high fashion environment. It's completely different. But I think that one of the most important things for women, with the things like too short a skirt, too low a top, it's about distraction. Do you want to be distracting people where you don't even want them to be having that conversation in their head, because you want them to be listening to what you're saying? So, and again, I've had my own clients have conversations to me about, because they're often quite senior, about their junior females in their team. And some of them are really sort of a slightly head in hand saying, I've got this amazing girl in my team and she wears the most revealing clothes. And the guys just can't, again, it's this sort of, they can't help themselves. They're just tongues on the floor, and it's a shame because it totally distracts from her brilliance. So it's a bit like, okay, yeah, you might want to wear that stuff, but if it will serve your career to just park that and keep that for your personal life, make the top a bit higher and make the skirt a bit shorter. Just be intentional. Just what do you want to get? Where do you want to go? And if it's something that you can just think, no, it's not going to serve me to only be seen, or not only be seen for that, but if that's something that's going to distract people from who I am, I'm going to leave it at home. And so just being conscious and being aware, that's my biggest message, is just to be aware of something and then make that choice consciously. If you're consciously choosing, no, to hell with it, I'm going to get my cleavage out, know why you're doing it, strategically.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? I know Lizzie and I are both very passionate about this. It's all about being strategic in your career. It's strategic about what jobs you apply to, being strategic about what relationships you build within the company so that you have that political support internally, strategic about, the sorts of clothes that you want to show up in, being strategic about how you ask for a pay raise and what time of year you choose to ask for a pay raise. You know what I mean? All of those small little things, if you can incrementally improve that by 1% here, there, and everywhere, all of a sudden at the end of the year, you're going to be 10, 20, 30 times better off than if you'd done nothing. And if you'd plateaued, and if you'd not thought strategically about your career, your salary, or your style. We have a couple of minutes left. If anyone has any final questions, because I want to be respectful. I know you all are in the middle of the workday in the UK, and I know it's early in the morning for those of you in the United States. But Lizzie, any final advice that you think people could put into action this week when they're thinking about the science behind salary and style and how they interplay together?
Yeah, I would just really have people to think about how they're showing up. Like you were saying about having, say in my exercise, it's 5 words, but even if it's just one word for that instance, like when you're walking into a room to negotiate a salary, what do you want people to know about you? And then just consider the clothes that you already own and what you would wear, and just be starting to think about it, so that when that time comes, you're not completely starting from scratch. But the most important thing is just to be aware of it and do an image audit, take photographs of different outfits. Again, one of the quick things that I recommend people do is to either do outfits like dressing for work in a number of outfits and take photographs, or literally document what they wear to work for a couple of weeks. Just take a picture before they leave the house and then look at it all. And often people just see, actually, you know what, I'm not showing up that great. I could do better. I could definitely do better. And if you've got an idea of having a pay increase and you want to go and negotiate, don't turn this around the day before. They're going to be thinking about you before. So think of the long game. It's like a long runway to the launch of this, pay rise. They will be noting things down the line. So just look like you're worth that. And just the final thing you mentioned about pricing, people, your appearance is your packaging. And, we always talk about, Apple is a common product that people talk about obviously it's a high price product, but the packaging is high price. And we have an expectation of the quality of the product inside. I want you to think of yourselves as, when you go into a negotiation, you are presenting yourself, that's your packaging. What do people then confer from that? Like what's on the inside? Harness these biases. They will see somebody, and we all know people who look all that and actually aren't, because they manage the facade. Well, if you've got both going for you, if you've got the fantastic facade and the stuff on the inside, then you're definitely, not only 1%, I reckon that's 10xing.
Yeah, and I love that, Lizzie. It's so true. Everyone on this call, we already know you're already in the 1% anyway. So we want to get you to the 0.1%. You know what I mean? We want to get you that extra 4 or 5 figure pay rise so that you can enjoy that and do amazing things with that money. Lizzie, we didn't even prepare this, but you said the long game, you know, and I'm just so passionate about helping people to think strategically about their careers in terms of that long game framework. If you're asking for a pay raise tomorrow, fine, you can start to prepare now, but honestly, you really should have been preparing a couple of months ago, laying those seeds, setting that groundwork in advance so that it's a no-brainer for them to say yes by the time you get to pay raise and performance review time. And it's the same thing with your style, which Lizzie's talked about so eloquently today. You know, we want to really set the tone and sort of set that expectation of how people should perceive you, preferably months in advance. But, you know, if that's not possible, the next best time is today, right? So let's start to think about those things this week. Preparation really is key when it comes to salary negotiation. So I love that Lizzie's mentioned that as well in terms of style, preparing your wardrobe, preparing you, like having a good iron or a steamer, even those little things, making it easy for you to show up how you want to in the workplace. So it's less of a drain and less of a sort of, oh, you know, I got to iron my clothes again. I hate my iron. Get yourself a good iron. Like it's those little things, you know, or
outsource it. You can get someone else to iron your clothes.
Absolutely, outsource it. Yeah, get those things outsourced, get them off of your plate so that you can focus on what you do best, which is hopefully partly your work and also enjoying work-life balance that comes from being successful in your career and being able to buy back some of that time to enjoy some downtime as well. That's the hope that we have for all of you today. Lizzie, this has been such a pleasure. We're going to pop the Instagram link to Lizzie's Instagram and the PepTalkHer Instagram in the chat now as well, so people can stay in touch beyond today's session. But one of the things that I've taken away from today, Lizzie, is having that key word for how you want other people to perceive you. That plays through in terms of how you show up in your emails, how you're showing up in meetings, and certainly how you're showing up in terms of your personal style. And also the other synergy I see between the salary preparation work we do at PepTalkHer and the style work that Lizzie does is preparation. It's so crucial that you think about how you're going to position yourself for a promotion or a pay rise in advance, how you want to be perceived in advance. Doing that groundwork ahead of time, truly, it pays huge, huge dividends. And, you know, you've taken the first step. You're here today, you're wanting to learn more. So hopefully you've taken some nuggets away from today's session too. Let me know in the chat, what's the one thing that you're going to put into place this week that you've learned from today's session? And Lizzie, I'm going to hand over to you for final thoughts before we wrap up today's session. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I can see in the chat someone, Sarah, you've said about the list. I don't have a list because it's a PDF document, a resource. So I'm going to send that out to everybody who's registered for this meeting today. So that will be sent out for you. Also, just to say, if you want to just watch a few more videos, I do have a YouTube channel which has got a few videos on which talks around some other things around personal style. And obviously, yeah, I think the link to my book's already been dropped in, but also I've got a membership called Elevate, which is where I work with people. Again, there's a couple of elevators on the call. It's so sweet that you've come along. And, you know, just to help this, you know, people do this and keep it front of mind, because it isn't yes, you could do something quick because you've got an interview tomorrow, but actually it's a long process. It can be, you know, it takes time, and it can, you know, it's a bit of a trial and error and a bit of a, you know, fluid process. So but thank you. I really appreciate everyone coming today, and it's been a really great discussion with you. Thanks, Meggie.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Lizzie's got an amazing membership, which we'll share with you. We've got an awesome free career challenge that's coming up in a couple of weeks that's really going to help you understand your value so that you can start to charge for it and get that raise. And the style piece obviously plays into that as well. So I'm excited for all of the learnings that are coming through in the chat as well. Please don't be a stranger. Follow Lizzie and I on Instagram. Let us know on there if you've got any further questions about style or about salary going forward. We want to support you. We'll be uploading this video as well, so you'll have a chance to watch this recording back or share it with friends. And we cannot wait to stay in touch. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. Thank you, Lizzie, so much for joining us, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks, y'all.
Maggie. Thanks everyone
Bye.
for coming. Thanks. Bye.